Okay.
Recorded live from the mats of Radical MMA in New York City, the Martial Culture Podcast. Your source for in-depth combat sports and martial arts insights with Coach Rene and Matt Peters. Ring the bell and let's get it on.
Hang on, I got to make sure I hit record. Did I hit record? I did. We're good.
Okay,
Welcome back to the Martial Culture Podcast. Hi, Rene.
Hello,
How's
Mr.
it
Matt
going?
Peters.
Tangle up in cords. This is live, right?
Is it live?
We'll do it live. Fuck it. UFC 235.
UFC 235.
The return of John Bones Jones.
The return of something.
The return of Turnable.
The return of Turnable.
Turnable turns again. We got to think about
that was some card. That was some card. It was
It's like Charlotte's Web. Some card. Like some pig.
Oh, that went over my head.
All right.
It's been a while since
Literary
I saw Charlotte's
nerds.
Web. No, that's
Put
a
it in
great
the
book.
comments.
It's a one. It's been probably like
It's a book?
it's probably 45 years
a
since.
movie.
Yeah, it's a movie, right? It was the animated movie, right? Is that
Yeah.
what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
I think they made a live action one too.
Probably.
No,
But yeah, it was some card.
yeah, it was, and it was interesting because, some fighters really turned up and some didn't. Starting with, Diego Sanchez refuses to lose. He fought Mickey Gall, who's, kind of touted as an up-and-comer, and proved that veteran experience really trumps a lot of things.
I really like Diego Sanchez.
Guy is
He's a
a
scrapper.
warrior. He's a scrapper. He was in the first. He was a champion of the first Ultimate Fighter
I
way
remember
back
watching
in.
that,
Yeah.
That's where I first saw him.
Yeah. Crazy. Pretty amazing. And the Johnny Walker flying KO, that was pretty amazing. There was Johnny Walker's like kind of the new, killer on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Maheta, the one who with the hammer on his chest. Those guys come from Brazil and they have a lot of power. But one of my favorite fights, which I know a lot of people are talking about because it wasn't like super action packed, was Zabit Magomed Sharipov
I must have gone to the bathroom
versus
during that one.
Stevens and Jeremy Stevens. It's a great, really technical fight. And Zabit's footwork, that kid is something else. He's another one. I remember when Adesanya first came on the thing, and I said, "Well, Adesanya's great." Well, I feel the same thing about Zabit. He does a couple things flashy here and there, but really, he's about great technical fundamentals. And it's kind of cool because he's basically from the Shaolin Temple. Do you know that?
Yeah,
So there's
cool.
okay. So in I believe it's Dagestan where he's from. They have this martial arts school where you just join when you're like 14, and it's like Hogwarts for fighting. and all you do is just train all day, and they develop fighters, and that's all you do all day. It's like a monastery for fighting. It's crazy, and he that's all he does all day, and he's really good. And all the dimensions of martial arts. He's a great striker. He's very good takedowns. And I don't remember, he had that cry bar submission where it was a leg lock from the back that looked really just incredibly painful. And remember, there was 2 in one night. It was a few UFCs ago. But he had the guy's back, and the guy kind of tried to shake him off. And then he grabbed his leg and stretched his leg out and just did a really, really, really painful submission. So that submission has a couple different names, but everybody used to call it the cry knee bar, the cry bar, right? Because you really cry when it happens. So he's very good at submissions, very good at striking, and I really look to see his future. Now, he is a smart fighter, which brings us to Cody Garbrandt and Pedro Munoz. Did you? Yeah, oh my God, that was like crazy. It was nuts. It started out super technical and like back and forth. Okay, Cody's switching stance and this and that. Pedro Munoz doing low kick, this and that. Oh, it's technical. And Munoz is like more traditional striker, and Cody Garbrandt's the new, striking 2.0. He's going, he's moving, and then he's like, oh, fuck you, motherfucker. You just pissed me off. I'm going to stand there, dude, absolutely nothing but brawl. And they just stood head to head and just threw bombs at each other.
Who's going to pass out first?
Right. Who's gonna drop? It was like rock'em sock'em robots. It was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And, fans go wild, but they just stood in front of each other and just wailed on each other. Did you see that old Pride fight with Don Fry and Tuck?
Oh, when they're just
slamming
each other.
right. It's
Brown
Brown Fry versus a blonde-haired Japanese pro wrestler, and they just they just tee off on each other for like 5 minutes. It was just so stupid, and this was like reminding me of that. It was like, okay, footwork, all that training we did, the slipping and moving and bobbing, we're not going to do that. Yeah. What we're going to do is just stand in front of each other and trade bombs like a dumb street fight.
He says that he suffered an accidental headbutt.
Yeah. And he got pissed off.
And then he doesn't remember the next 3 minutes.
Really?
He said that he was on autopilot and just...
No kidding.
Maybe he blacked out a little bit.
Yeah, that's probably... that's an interesting thing because technically, headbutts are illegal in MMA. Now, I bring my head backwards and grab your neck and slam my head into your head is not really legal. You'd probably be called out for that. But that's actually not a great technique anyway. But let me tell you, headbutts are everywhere, and they really change the nature of fights. And let me tell you, if you look at crime statistics, too, one of the most common street assaults is a headbutt. So you have to prepare yourself for that. You have to prepare the wrestler coming in and cracking heads, or, boxers used to do it all the time. Holyfield was really well known as a dirty headbutt fighter in boxing because it's technically illegal. But, Munoz, I'm not saying he did it on purpose, but accidental headbutts and purposeful headbutts are a part of the MMA game. And, am I cocking my head back and headbutting you? No. But as I'm coming in for a shot or as I'm slipping and bobbing and weaving, bop, I hit you and cut you. I've seen a lot of fights, the dynamic completely changed from a headbutt. So you have to protect yourself. And Cody, he has great head movement. But if you noticed, he was fighting with his hands down before the knockout. He does a lot of like upper body movement to slip and bob and weave, and he actually got Munoz through a couple hooks, and he dove, he kind of weaved underneath them, and it was really good. But the thing is, when your hands are down, the chance of you getting hurt, like old school Anderson Silva, remember that? His hands are down. Come on, Chris Weidman, come on and get me. Yeah. Bop.
There you go.
There you go. Okay, I will. I'll take that. I will accept that offer to knock you out. And that's what he's doing. Man, I don't believe with fighting your hands down. I don't believe it. It's just too dangerous. Particularly, it's not really effective when somebody's trying to like hit you with a baseball bat or something like that.
The first thing you learn.
Yeah, keep your hands up. Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. And of course, sometimes your hands do come down. You can't help it, but you want to keep them up. So if your hands are down, you're going to get headbutted. Yeah. And I've seen that probably in this year alone, in the fights I've seen this year alone, I've probably seen 4 major headbutts. And last year, I stopped counting after like 25. There's so many headbutts. But the old school headbutt is not there. But actually, that old school headbutt was not something I found like completely effective. Also, it damages you. Now, if you don't really know how to do it, I'm a headbutt aficionado, and I teach the headbutt all the time because I actually learned from a guy in Japan how to really throw headbutts effectively. And there's a martial art that includes headbutts called Lathwai. It's Burmese boxing. It's basically Thai boxing blood headbutts, and you can see the intricacies of that style. So, man, it's a part of MMA, whether they're accidental or on purpose, and many of them are on purpose. You have to keep your hands up. And if he was knocked senseless from that headbutt, man, that's also your defense was porous.
Yeah. He still won $50,000 for being fight of the night.
Fifth fight of the night, huh?
Congratulations.
Yeah. But just standing in front, I didn't realize that he says he knocked senseless, but I think maybe.
Is it an excuse?
Yes. I think it might be like partially true because he has a history of losing his cool. He does. He has a history of losing his cool, and he needs to be more composed in his fights. The minute emotion takes over, you will not fight your best. You have to be in that zone. And we talk about this many times. The minute you're like, motherfucker. And I believe that he got headbutted. If I remember correctly, I have to watch the fight again. I've only seen it since the one time. But I think he was, if I remember, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he did signal to the ref that he got headbutted. He was kind of complaining about it, right? Mm-hmm. So how unconscious can you really be if you have the wherewithal to complain about it? Yeah. Now, I'm not saying he's lying. I'm not saying that. But it's also...
Convenient.
Isn't it convenient?
So the next 3 losses in a row, all to KO in the first or second round.
Yeah, and it's fan favorite, but if you do all that training to be tactical and you're not drawing on it, there's a problem. And before we started, you said that he might need a sports psychology coach. I think that's the best thing I've ever heard. It's like, dude, calm your emotions. Have that 1,000-mile stare and be a Zen warrior. You cannot get roped into. The other thing about Cody is like, dude, you have to use your grappling more, and not just be a striker. He's like kind of fell in love with his punching, which is really good. But also, he's actually quite a good wrestler. And why he doesn't, use those techniques, kind of beyond me. He kind of got in love with his hand, and that happens to a lot of people. Tyrone Woodley, we're going to talk about. He's not really in the contention anymore, but what's his name? The big rig, Johnny Hendricks. They come from a wrestling background, but then they get so in love with punching that they just forget to wrestle. There's so many guys like that, and the best way to confuse a opponent and open him up is to switch from one dimension to the other very quickly. And, he doesn't really do that, so, so that was my take on that. But Pedro Munoz, this guy's coming up, man. This guy's legit. He's got very good grappling. And he's like one of those new school Brazilian guys where he's very well rounded. He's got, as I understood, I didn't do the research, but they said it on the podcast, on the cast, that he has over 400 grappling matches, jiu-jitsu matches in competition. And he also has like a lot of boxing competition. So he's like one of those new school Brazilians that has a very strong grappling background and has very good takedowns and also for pretty good striking. I mean, the kid is so legit. He's like more old school striking, but he's good. He's really good. And he was giving Cody fits with those calf kicks, So with the kicks. So hey, there you go. Then there was the next one I was watching was Wei Li Zhang and Tisha Torres. And have you seen any of Zhang's previous fights?
No. She's
like a Chinese female Vanderlei Silva. She comes to brawl, man. This girl is a tank. She's a little maybe more. I wouldn't say she's not technical, but she is not the most fluid fighter. But she just gets in your face and just wants to f you up. And Tisha Torres, they were like kind of clones of each other. They're girls, but they're very, very physical. Both of them, they're very physical. And it was Tisha Torres like fighting her clone, and just Wei Li outstruck her and really out scrambled her on the ground. Then they exchanged a lot of headlock throws, which is basically a hip throw but over the headlock, which I don't really always agree with. But she comes to fight. She will not be anything to ever challenge the main top three like the Rose or Joanna, but this girl comes to fight, and but she's not quite there yet for the upper echelon. She needs to put it together a little bit more. But what a heart, and very interesting matchup that they were two kind of like clones of each other. They just came to brawl, and they did. And Tisha tried to keep it technical, but the other she's overpowered, Which brings us to the last two, the major card. So okay, I'm gonna shut up. What did you think of Robbie Lawler versus Ben Askren? What did you think? So for the people who don't know, go over what happened.
It was a great fight. They called it perfectly. There was no issues that I could see. Robbie Lawler was taking a nap. What are you going to do?
Do you actually believe that?
No.
Oh, okay.
His hand dropped. I mean, so he had him on the ground at the end of the fight, and they called it as a submission.
Yeah.
And his hand dropped, and it looked.
It did. It
right
looked,
at the first, but his hand just came off the cage.
Yeah. No,
it didn't drop.
So this is. I think Ben Askren looked like crap, and this is the question was, because Ben Askren's the Bellator champ, he's the ONE FC champ. Can he stand up because he's from another promotion? The real question was, does he have the level to make it in the UFC? And Robbie Lawler is tough. I wouldn't say he's, going to go for the title anytime soon, but he's definitely a gatekeeper. He's a tough guy, and he's in the mix. What does Ben Askren have, to make it in the UFC? And it shows that he really knows how to wrestle ride, how to ground control, but his striking is really terrible.
Yeah. So you think that Robbie was winning that fight?
Oh, I mean, did you see he picked him up and slammed him on his
head?
That
was amazing slam.
Oh my God. That was in Japanese, that's called the suinage, or it's a variation of the high C, where you just go and just pick him up, and he just flipped him over, and just the guy fell right on his head. Reminiscent of like some of the old school wrestlers who used to drop people on their heads a lot. Not completely on their head, but Karelin from Greco-Roman would just pick guys up and rotate them in many different ways, not the same as this. And there's a lot of wrestlers who just have those just power bomb dumps. And Robbie was like, you're not going to take me down. But then he just kind of weirdly shut off. And Robbie has never been great on the ground. That's just a fact. He's never been a ground guy. He's a sprawl and brawl guy. And Askren did wrap him up. And it's weird. He just stopped. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? And then he got his back taken. And he escaped the choke the wrong way. Because it started that the choke that he got caught in was called a bulldog choke, which is not that common in MMA. The most common finish, the finish that way back when. Do you remember Pat Miletich?
Mm-hmm.
Pat Miletich fought Carlos Newton, and Pat Miletich was the man. He's like, oh, he's a well-rounded new breed fighter. Carlos Newton puts him in bulldog choke and puts him unconscious. And there was another bulldog choke. I think it was Matt Hughes or something. Yeah, and not the most common submission, but it does happen, and it is a legit choke. It's not just a neck crank. And you wind up there if you expose your neck or escape the back attacks the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And then it looked like Robbie Lawler was out. And I was like, whoa, is he out? But then he's still moving. And then the referee stopped the fight. And he popped back up. Mm-hmm. So not a good call, but totally understandable, as Joe Rogan said. You know, like is he out? Is not? And it is what it is.
It's better to make the wrong decision that way.
Yeah, right.
The opposite.
Right. I would have still, even if he was there, I would have given it a little longer because it wasn't like, even for the safety of fighters, it's very important. I totally believe that. But he only had it for a little bit.
I just wondered, like, it was Herb, right? Was the referee?
The Herb, yeah.
And
Herb's a great ref. He made a mistake. But...
Did he communicate with him and say, like, give me some sort of indication that you're...
I don't think he did, and I think that's what he should have done. But he did shake his hand, and, like, he kind of shook his hand. But this is what happens when you get choked a lot. You don't see what's going on. So a lot of times you're choked, and your world distillates to the arm around your neck. Even if you can't, maybe you can physically see, but all your consciousness just goes to that point. So you're not receiving the signals of your eyes. So a lot of times I'm going to choke and I can't see anything. It's just darkness. So and I'm not getting choked out. I mean, like, you're just so focused on the choke. You're not looking, you're not seeing. Mm-hmm. And what I believe Robbie Lawler tried to do, I don't believe he was out. And Dave Camarillo is a very famous jiu-jitsu master and former coach at AKA, and great. He said, but he would, even if it wasn't out there, he would have gotten caught anyway because he was done. But I don't know about that. And I respect his opinion. I absolutely respect Dave Camarillo. But, the way I saw it, and I'm not saying I'm right, but the way I saw it was he knew he was in a bad spot. A lot of times when you're in a bad spot, you try to limp out. You try to, like, wiggle and limp out. And I really think that's what he's doing because it's a technical way to get out, especially when you're caught in kind of a neck crank, like a choke neck crank combination. If you explode, man, you're going to just hurt yourself more. And I think his vision went to just like, what's his thing? And somebody's playing with his hand. He doesn't know if it's Herb Dean, and he doesn't know if it's Ben Askren messing with his hand. He doesn't know. So he's like, I'm not responding. I'm just focusing on limping out of this choke and making sure it doesn't get deeper. And that's what I think happened. I don't think Ben Askren had him. And you said there's going to be a rematch, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they already said that.
Do you know when
it's going to be in London? So I think that's soon.
It's good, because he totally deserves a rematch, and I don't think Ben Askren will take this one. Ben Askren is not ready for the elite of UFC, regardless of what happened. He is not. He is not ready. This kid is gonna get shellacked. If he can't, he's unidimensional, and unidimensional fighters generally don't do well in the mid to low weight classes. So this, you could be a little more unidimensional like Ngannou in heavyweight, but when you go to the lower weight classes, it's very, very difficult. Like, I always talk about Damian Maia, although tremendous respect for his last performance, tremendous, absolutely amazing. But if you're unidimensional and your opponent has more skills, hey, it's going to be, and this is the Woodley fight exactly. You're dealing with a person who has a lot of skills, and you're trying to bring only one skill to bear. So, very, Askren, I just, I'm a little disappointed because actually his mat control, his mat work is really amazing. It's amazing. But he reminds me a little of Jake Shields, who I have a lot of respect for, but Jake Shields never took to the striking game. He just never did. And Ben Askren's striking does not impress me. And also, he seems to be able to, if he fights someone with a really good takedown defense, or I don't know what Ben Askren has on the ground in terms of really detailed submission game, in terms of wrestling mat work, which is very different from jiu-jitsu. It's about wrist rides and control and ground and pound. He's very good. like a Daniel Cormier or even a John Jones or a Khabib. They have that control, but then they also can put it together, particularly Jones and Khabib can really put it together with a detailed understanding of the submission game. And I don't know if Ben Askren has it. I don't know. I'm not saying he doesn't, but it's interesting to see what he has. Ben Askren did give himself a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, which is just nuts. It's just crazy.
Can I have one?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, just give yourself one, right? Because you don't need like lineage or you don't need to do that. Just boom,
You can give me one, right? You go way back.
You have to just pay me money. That's all.
I gotcha.
Yeah, just give me a whole lot of money. That's
so Ben Askren, we're not sure if he's got it yet. We didn't really get a good chance to see it because there was only a couple minutes into the fight.
Yeah.
So we'll see the rematch and see how that goes.
See how it goes. So interesting. Now the next fight, Usman versus Woodley. Very, very interesting fight.
I didn't watch this one.
Didn't watch it?
I don't know why.
Well,
I just wasn't paying attention.
Woodley's the champ.
He was the champ.
Yeah, was the champ, right? And
spoiler alert,
right? And and I was actually the night before I was like slightly cleaning the academy, and I was listening to a podcast of him talking. And he's like, I'm the most tactical, well-rounded guy this division has seen. And
Woodley,
yeah, Woodley, and he's not like talking trash. He's like, I'm always watching tape. I'm doing this, and I'm like, wow, that's really cool. That's great. But and he's like saying because he's had some performances where it's kind of a snoozer. And he becomes this like counter fighter, and he's trying to explain why all those old fights were snoozers. And he's like, yeah, I made this guy fight this way because, I was challenging him this way and this, and okay, cool. Okay. I was like, oh, interesting. But I don't think that is true. I think what happens is this. In his training camp, he's used to being, and we talked about this in many podcasts, you're used to being the toughest, strongest guy in the room. And so you kind of like lay back and you counterfight a lot more. And he's like, especially the champion, he's like, man, you got to come beat me. So what I'm going to do is wait for you to kind of make a mistake. I'll counter you. And you saw that with the Thompson fight where nothing happened. I mean, nothing happened until he hit him once. And then he won a very lackluster decision. With his Darren Till fight, I mean, legitimately, he tapped him out legitimately, but at the same time, I mean, Tyron Woodley's really good, but at the same time, he's like more passive. And sometimes, people can really take advantage of that. And you see people get a little bit more passive. And when you're fighting someone who is your physical equal or superior, suddenly passivity doesn't work. Man, you got to move, you got to weave, you got to put action on, you got to do this, you got to do this. And Woodley's corner was like, come on, you got to go, you got to do this, you got to do this. And he's like, dude, every round, he's like, dude, you're losing here. This is bad, man. You can't back up. You got to do this, you got to do this. And he's like, boom. And he's just backing up, which is something he always did, backing up and kind of being counterfighted. And then he just got dominated because his mom was like, oh, you're going to let me do that? Well, guess what? I got more coming. And he just, really wonderful shoot boxing, striking to take down, striking to take down, striking to take down, trying to clinch. And he just destroyed him from the standing clinch, destroyed him from the takedown, the striking, destroyed him from the ground, mounted him, just beat him down. There was not one moment where, Woodley could say he had some point to the fight. And, he was doing these desperation moves. There's jumping guillotine, and it's a strong guy move. And he's desperation. And then, after someone beats the snot out of you on the ground, you don't want to jump guard, which in my academy, I don't let people jump guard. And we just talked about Pedro Munoz, the last fight. He had a really good guillotine at one point where he did this guillotine and Ortega too, where you do these guillotines, but a lot of times you roll the guy and instead of winding up in your guard, you wind up on top or like slightly lateral to them where you're not underneath them. I don't believe in really jumping guard and finishing because it's too much of a risk. Jump the guillotine, roll him over, wind up, mount. Now, if you lose the guillotine, you're on top. So, I would say, I always talk about like, what can we learn from each fight? And I would say, for the listeners out there, it's like, if you're going to go for a guillotine, don't jump guard. Jump to a sweeping guillotine and then wind up on top. Use it to, like Uriah Faber used to do the same thing. All the Team Alpha Male guys, they do it a lot. They jump to guillotines, but then what they do is they roll you over and they either have mount or a very top kind of lateral position. They do it all the time. Very, very important to do that. Because then it was like a desperation movie. And then he loses the guillotine and then he gets wrecked again. Like, and you're tired because your arm's burnt out. Yeah. And it was a bad fight. It was a bad fight in terms of like, Usman's performance. I mean, Woodley's performance, but Usman was great. And, the first Nigerian UFC champion, this is cool. And, first, I think African champion, I would assume, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think so.
Yeah. Nagano would have been, but he's not. So, that's pretty cool. That's
very cool.
Yeah. And he was awesome. He was amazing. And, it's not called Black Zillions anymore. It's called, Hard Knocks 360 or something. But it's the Black Zillion camp. Mm-hmm. And they're really, they have some guys that are really in the mix and doing well. And that camp is another, it's a camp that had to retool itself after Black Zillion's collapse. And I believe their funding got cut off or something like the guy died who was funding it or something like that. But the Black Zillion camp died and it was reconstituted under Henry Hooft, who's a Dutch Muay Thai fighter, and the camp is great.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right. Woodley is looking for a rematch right away. He wants to fight again.
That's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. That is like you got shellacked for all the entire fight. You do not deserve an immediate rematch.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think Ben Askren and Robbie Lawler should have one. Like that's a different story.
Well, there was a story about Colby Covington and Usman's camp. Or corner to get in a fight.
So the whole fight, Colby Covington is standing up, wearing what I believe was a "Make America Great Again" hat, and and having, I believe, must have been a fake UFC belt, holding it, standing in the audience, right, and he has like a front row seat, so he's standing the whole fight, standing there, doing his like, I don't know, his masculine, beating his chest gorilla dance. Yeah. They're not really dance, but like just kind of there. And then saying, I'm going to take you. And his typical Colby Covington, like, bull crap. And just being stupid. And for you guys who don't know, Colby Covington, he's like the new trash talker, wannabe Conor McGregor guy. And he's good. I mean, legitimately he's good. But he's also like out of control in terms of his toxicity and silliness. But he's good. And, American Top Team and Black Zillions have always had a rivalry because, they used to be really close to each other. And the guy who founded Black Zillions was, had some relation to American Top Team, but then he left and formed his own team. And then a bunch of American Top Team guys left. And so they're like, oh, these guys are a bunch of traitors. So there's always been a little bad blood between those teams. And like I said, Black Zillions, kind of had to recreate it, but it's basically the same guys. It's Rashad Evans, Jay-Z Cavalcanch, George Santiago, and now Gilberto Durino Burns is there. And he's the Swiss fighter. It's, I believe his name is Volkan Ozdemir. That's the one, he's the one who fought Daniel Cormier, right?
Ozdemir?
Yeah, Ozdemir, right? For Daniel Cormier. The bald Swiss guy, right? Yeah. He trains there. A lot of guys train there, and it's a really tough camp, but they have a lot of bad blood with American Top Team. So Colby Covington's obviously American Top Team, and they're like I said, they're neighbors. So I'm sure on the amateur circuit they see each other a lot, those two teams, and it is what it is, or the lower level MMA circuit, So there's that too, and Colby Covington being his brash self is inflaming the fires and yeah, whatever. But what did he do? What did he do after the fight? I don't pay attention to that.
Well, he's been permanently banned from the Palms Casino Resort after a skirmish with UFC welterweight champion Kamaru Usman's manager Ali Abadiz. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name. They got in a fight after in the hotel resort, and he's been banned.
Wait. He confronted Usman, or he just confronted his manager?
His manager.
Wow, I don't even know why I did that. But anyway, yeah, he's an idiot. Yeah, wow. But I don't like the modern UFC managers, but they'll probably use this as promo for setting up a fight.
He was yelling. Oh my God, Colby Covington was yelling that terrorist rat should be deported back to whatever country he snitched on.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. Let's
move on from Colby Covington.
Yeah.
On to John Bones Jones.
Yeah.
It was a good fight. I mean, nobody was surprised. I don't think.
No. Didn't we have a bet?
I don't think so. If we did, I don't think I lost.
No. I don't think. I think I said it would be like the third round, stoppage or further, or something like that. I think
you telling me you won?
No. But I think I said a stoppage. So I don't think either of us won.
Yeah, no, nobody won.
Yeah, I think it's an even one. Yeah, because you said it was going to go like really.
I thought it would be like a first or second.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I said it's going to go the third round. Because look, Anthony Smith, I don't think I don't think he was ever a threat. Like if somebody told me in the academy, do you think he's good? Because the kid has like 40 MMA fights pro and 30 amateur. He's got like tons and tons and tons.
31 and 14 and a professional record. Yeah. That's insane.
And then he's like amateur is like crazy. So he's got like almost 80 fights. That's nuts. So he's got a lot of experience. However, he's not there yet. And maybe he will be, he has a lot of growth, but he's not there yet. So I was like, there's no way he can challenge John Jones. I just don't see it. And
well, Jones almost lost that fight.
Yeah, but not because
DQ. Almost.
Yeah, DQ.
To a repeat of Matt Hamill.
Right. But do you think that was intentional? Because Jones is a cheater. Like you don't think it's intentional? No, for real.
Just with the eye pokes and everything, the same king. And I think he's a gangly weirdo, and he's too big for his own good, and he does things on accident. Yeah, it's. I think it's sort of like that guy, the awful guy who fought in the who almost DQ'd himself in the last fight. The football guy. Oh yeah, I can't remember his name, but
yeah, right. So sometimes you do things on purpose, right? For sure. And there are times where John Jones has done certain things on purpose, and you're like, and cheating is rampant in the UFC. It's not just him. Like I said, headbutts. Cheating is rampant. And there was that Chinese fighter who like legitimately took his thumb and just jammed in the other guy's eye to get out of the guillotine. Like dude, come on.
That's what I would do though. Fuck that. Get off my back.
Yeah. But this one, I think it was really fast. And I was saying, if it were me, would I have hit him in the head? And yeah, John Jones has been around for a long time and he's very experienced. He knows better. But at the same time, it was really fast. And I'm like, if I was kicking like that and the guy was in this position, I probably would have connected to his head too, because it's just too fast. I'm not that fast to think. Now, of course, John Jones is way faster than I am. But I'm like, I could see that being a legitimate mistake. Now, only John Jones knows what's John Jones' head, but I'm glad they didn't DQ him because, that was within the margin of error. But do you think that altered the fight in any way? I don't really think so, because I think the fight, so. Yeah.
It wasn't that important, I don't think.
Yeah, also, I think John Jones looked like crap.
You did?
Yeah, even though, he was a dominant performance.
Well, he probably didn't prepare as much as he should have for this fight. I
don't think he prepared. I think he was like, yes, that's exactly what I think. I don't think he took it seriously. So I don't think he showed up. He's a weirdo. He's a weirdo. And he's very, he needs another one. He needs a coach to get his psychological, sports psychologist coach to get his head on straight. So, the martial arts is not just about physical ability, but it's about training your mind as well. And, I'm not talking about the cultist stuff that we touch upon in the True Believers podcast episode, which I think everybody should check out. But at the same time, just on a performance basis, if you can't get in the zone, if you can't get your mind straight, you're not going to win. And then, so what you have to do is you have to train your mind in some way to perform and to be your best and to also strive to be your best and put hard work in the gym. And, I think John Jones like, yeah, I'm not motivated. This guy's not that good, whatever, dude. And I don't think he trained that much for this fight. He's not motivated. But that being said, this Anthony is durable. He's durable and he's very, very tough.
Yeah.
And he didn't come like he at a certain point, you could see in his face, he was going like this. I make this expression. He was going like this in his face. And Jones did big brother him. Meaning like, oh, you're going to try that? Bop. You pay for this. Oh, you're going to try that? Bop. You pay for this. Oh, you pay for this. And then he's like, fuck, I don't know what to do. And Jones got in his head. And it's funny because they weren't trash talking. Jones was like, oh, you guys they were talking, but they were like, Anthony Smith was very respectful. He's like, oh, that was pretty cool. But I think he was like, oh, you are the big brother and I'm the junior. And fuck, I don't really know what to do here. And then what happens is you go down the spiral where it's paralysis by analysis. You're like, should I do this? Should I do this? And you wind up doing nothing. And
interesting.
And that happens. And I think that's, it takes two to fight. And I think when he wasn't pushing, Jones was like, all right, you're not pushing. Well, I'll do what I need to do. You're not going to win. So I already got 3 rounds. Whatever, dude.
Do you think Jones kept it going so it went 5 rounds for any particular reason?
Yeah, and this I totally agree with. There's certain fighters where they want to manage the damage they take. And I get that. So he's like,
take much,
yeah. I mean, but he's like, well, I can coast out this victory without putting myself out of here, and I don't have to get hurt. So I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. It's working. I'm not getting hurt, and I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. So there's no reason for me not to do more.
Yeah.
And so I kind of get that. I don't think it was conscious, like, oh, let me take it further for fan service. Like the Ali Aquinta Khabib fight was kind of like that, where Khabib was like, let me take this a little bit longer, so give some fan service, because you could just tell he was like, I could probably finish this. No disrespect to Ali Aquinta, who's a great fighter, but he wasn't really offering Khabib a lot of defense in other ways. Although he obviously Khabib's like, well, I'll just practice my jab here.
He took the fight on like 2 weeks notice.
Yeah, that's true. That no disrespect to your friend, no disrespect, but I'm just saying, and he's a great fighter, and he deserves to be in the fight mix. And all
but
that.
you could see that.
But that fight was exactly. That
sure.
fight was like, he needed more full camp for sure, and Khabib was like, okay, let's prolong this fight for a little bit of fan service or for my own practice. And I don't think John Jones made that calculation, like let's do it. But I do think he was like, everything I'm doing right now is working, so I don't need to do anything more.
Sure.
I have this one with one of my fighters that when you put someone really tough in front of him, he rises to the challenge and performs his best. And that's happened with a few guys. And when you put someone who's not a challenger, he kind of is like, oh, okay, this is enough to win, and I'm not going to lose, but this is enough. That he really rises to the challenge and fights to the level of his opponent. And a lot of fighters are like that. And I don't, it's
steel sharpens steel.
Yeah, for sure. That's our motto. But it's also like you rise to that challenge. And if the challenge is not there, you're like, why do I have to rise? I don't need to go past this. Which is not, I don't endorse that, but I understand
it. As little as possible.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I think that's, but that happens. What happens is then you don't have the gear. You kind of lose the gear to go further. And I think that's a little what happened with Tyron Woodley. Like he didn't have that extra gear.
Yeah, he's not being tested.
Right.
There's a couple news stories that I want to talk about before we move on to the meat of the episode. Big congratulations. We haven't talked about it in a little bit, but Mackenzie Dern announced that she's pregnant. So
to the sadness of many male fans.
She does pledge to come back and fight as soon as, obviously, she gives birth and recovers. And
do you think she'll come back?
I do.
Oh, okay.
You don't think she is? I mean, it seems like fighting is a very important part of her life. Maybe not in UFC. Maybe she'll fight in like, gi tournaments or something like that.
No. I think, she'd probably do something like that. But I think, especially with the weight cut, and, coming after pregnancy, that's got to be, look, I'm not an expert, but it's got to be really, really hard. She already struggled with weight cut issues before.
Well, you should move up a weight class.
Yeah. That's probably, that's probably a good idea. Yeah.
But congratulations.
No, that's good for her.
I think married to like a Brazilian surfer guy.
Oh, really?
So
yeah, I think my wife mentioned that she had something like that. Yeah,
congratulations.
Yeah, poor Buchecha. Sorry, she Mackenzie Dern's left a trail of broken hearts in the jiu-jitsu community, starting with Tanguinho. She's moved on to a surfer dude now.
She's going through all the sports.
Yeah.
Hopefully she's settled.
I think the surfer dudes are the better looking ones, probably.
Less cauliflower ears.
Yeah, exactly.
Then we have just recently, as of 3 hours ago, Dana White confirms that Daniel Cormier's next fight will be against Brock Lesnar.
No, really? Mm-hmm. Oh, boy.
And instead, Stipe sits and waits.
That's
literally the next story.
What? I actually, I'm not a Brock Lesnar fan by any means, but I don't know.
I mean, a lot of people are, but they shouldn't be.
They shouldn't be, right?
At least not UFC.
Yeah. Talk about toxic masculinity right there. But
nice segment.
But that's kind of an interesting fight if Brock really trains hard, and I don't think he has any of that. But he is. Look, the guy has a legitimate record in MMA. Was a former champ,
wrestler,
came back. I mean, former UFC champ. Come on. I'm not a fan, but he has had some. He's put together some victories, and he's a force, man. That guy is a force. So that's an interesting fight, particularly given that Daniel is very undersized for heavyweight. He is. So, and Brock Lesnar is not. So that's a little bit of a David versus Goliath. little bit of Japanese, sideshow matchup, but it's interesting and compelling.
Where's this fight won? Where did they win this fight? I think I'm rooting for Cormier in this one.
Of course.
Because I don't like Lesnar. And I think the Cormier is a better fighter all around anyway.
If Lesnar takes Cormier to the ground, Cormier is fucked. I believe
really.
That. I don't think Cormier is really that good.
Lesnar's big.
He's huge.
He's
and
huge
I don't think Cormier is
275.
really because he's so used to being the guy. As we always talk about, when you're a guy in the room who can put everybody on your back, it's not often that you train your guard or your half guard or your butterfly guard. It's not often you train that. And how often is Daniel Cormier being put on his back all the time and just making sure that he can deal with the guy that size? I don't know. And Daniel Cormier doesn't move like he's really a guy who could deal with Daniel Cormier with Brock Lesnar's weight without giving up his back. So this is what happens if Cormier gets taken down, he'll try to scramble up into turtle and give up his back. And there I could see like one big punch from Brock Lesnar or kind of a control from Brock Lesnar hitting him. However, I really would give it to Daniel Cormier because Daniel Cormier Brock Lesnar has very poor striking, although he did get better. He has a lot of power, but he doesn't have technical striking. Upper body clinch, that's hard. I would say an upper body clinch, I'd give the advantage to Daniel Cormier probably. And on the top position, both of them are weak in the guard, on the back. Both of them are weak on their back. So whoever gets put on his back is going to lose. But, it's interesting. It's interesting because it's going to probably go to clinch because I don't think Brock Lesnar can bully Daniel Cormier to the ground. So it's going to go to clinch, and whose clinch is better? And, Brock Lesnar is a bully. He's a bully, meaning this. When he does well, he does great. But once you hit him and you punish him, he cracks. He cracks bad. So, I mean, and Cormier has power now. When he puts on that weight, I mean, he drops Stipe, I was not expecting that. But when he puts that weight on, he has some power. So I think this is what's going to happen. They're going to wind up in the clinch because neither one were good distance strikers. Neither one. They're going to wind up in the clinch, and then Cormier is going to hit one of the two guys. Is going to hit the other guy with power from the clinch. It's going to go down, and then it's going to be a TKO from like Turtle. That's what I see. And then probably I think Brock Lesnar probably the one to tap out first because he's a bully. And when you push bullies, they break. That's it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's
what I think.
There's no official date announced, so we'll talk more details as we get closer. But that just came out, so I wanted to throw it at you.
But speaking
of Brock Lesnar,
so okay. Did you see? I want to talk about this, and this is really important to any martial artist because I think we can. Martial arts is most martial art practitioners right now are male. That's true. That's just a fact. Most martial art practitioners, particularly the very more combative martial arts, you go to any dojo, it's usually 85% guy, 20% girl, and that's it. That's true. I think that's sad. That's unfortunate, but it's generally true. So martial arts is very often a path for us to explore our masculinity and our sense of selves, which I think can be very healthy. Explore your sense of your physicality, explore your sense of self-protection, because I think in our way of conceiving of the world and the way we look at being a man, not being able to protect yourself can be very, very much an insecurity for guys, particularly not so much in self-defense, like, oh, I'm going to get mugged on the street, but more like ego defense, like I'm in a bar and a guy like gets in my face and, I have to like not look like an idiot in front of the girls and this, and it becomes this performative thing. And also, legitimately self-defense as well, obviously there's that. So martial arts is very often this path for us to develop our masculine traits. And so there's that Gillette ad, which is very much a little bit left of center politically, which is like, don't be toxically masculine, be strive for your best. Have you seen that ad? Have you seen? Yeah. And what'd you think about it?
I had no problems with it. I mean,
yeah, right.
Sense,
exactly right. I had no problems. And yet, and like a lot of people just blow up and they're like, oh, this is an attack on masculinity. And, this whole concept of toxic masculinity is like bullshit. And, it's like, people today are a bunch of snowflakes, blah, blah, blah. The problem I have is it's ignoring data. I had terrible news. I mentioned this on one podcast, but a martial artist I really look up to, his name is Carl Tanswell. He is the first UK Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He was part of the SBG network, which is Conor McGregor's network, but he founded SBG Manchester. He's a great martial artist. He also is was a great innovator in the empty hand versus knife defense. He has this knife defense system. And I thought he was brilliant. I was hopefully looking forward to meet him. And he's an old school tough guy in the sense that, he was really there fighting, and he's known as confronting a martial arts fraud and kind of showing him up, because he was one of the cheap last guys in Europe. And he's like, dude, this is a little crap. Try your stuff on me. And anyway, but he's an old school martial artist, really a pioneer, and wound up taking his life. And just today, and the band Prodigy, the guy just killed himself. Right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, it's something like 1 in 4 guys in America, suicide and drug overdose are the leading cause. I don't know the exact leading cause of death right now. Suicide and drug overdose. And the reason people turn to drugs is because they're by the data, unhappy. Anxiety among men, tremendous. And I think that's what kind of fuels like a lot of this like political climate we have, because we feel a lot of anxiety. We can't define ourselves in the positive masculine virtues that we used to, and it drives us to despair. Also, on the male side, that's that. So there's a lot of problems for men. Men are dealing with a lot of problems. And part of them is that they go into what's the psychologist, the American Psychiatric Association just came out and said that, when they're dealing with men, and this is psychiatrists, this is not political. This is a book that they came out and they said this, they come out with this, book of like directions for psychiatrists for the, next 5 years or something. Right. And they're like, toxic masculinity, don't use those terms, but the toxic masculinity is a thing. And you have to try to understand that these definitions of manliness can really isolate and drive people to despair. And this is something we have to talk about. And so, the Carl Tanswell, supposedly had a lot of these demons, like that drove him to that. And I just had this wonderful conversation with, my student. And I said, competition, sometimes you compete and you want to defeat the guy in the academy, and, everything that is your thing is, I want to beat this guy down, because your ego is so involved in that. Because what is ego? Well, ego is like, oh, it's my sense of self. Well, my sense of self doesn't feel good. My sense of myself, what does it mean? My sense of myself as a man doesn't feel good unless I'm the hammer. That's not healthy. And we see that in a lot of martial arts schools where it's toxic. You get your boost of manliness by being the dominant alpha, being the guy. And you see this. You walk around at any gym and you see toxic masculinity all the time. The bros walk around flashing their pecs and, and then, they go to the beach and they take advantage of the scrawny other kid. And that's toxic. Look, we've all experienced toxic masculinity because a lot of us were bullied by guys who are jerks. But you know what? Not only that, so that makes us want to be more masculine. And very often that leads us to abusing or domineering other people. It's not like, oh, I'll be a healthier person because of that. It's I perpetrate the cycle. And that is a terrible thing. The other thing is, when we perpetrate the cycle, our definition of us versus who? Women. We treat women like crap. It's one, there's a statistic, I forget what it is, but statistics of groping and sexual assault are terrible. And then this just came out a couple days ago, Duke University, really amazing institution. 3 out of 4 female undergrads at Duke University admitted in a survey, and this is like hundreds of people, that they were sexually assaulted or groped. 3 out of 4. Like, there's a problem here, guys. There's a problem in how we treat women. And there's a problem with how we treat ourselves. And nobody's saying that we're going to attack masculinity. But at the same time, life is balanced. Every human being is a combination of both masculine and feminine traits. And there's good masculinity and there's toxic masculinity. We're not having a war on men. What we want to do is let's identify what's positive, like that commercial, and say, let's do this and be better versions of ourselves, but also identify things that are not good. And sometimes we do this. Like, I truly believe in grit and pushing yourself and going hard and going strong. And, yesterday I'm coaching one of my students I love the kid. He's a wonderful guy. And I was coaching him hard. I'm like, go, you got to do this. And I was really hard on him because I want to bring the best out of him. But at the same time, I have empathy for him, a lot of empathy. And I went home and I couldn't stop thinking about it because, I'm like, I think at the same time, and empathy is like, quote unquote, a female trait, which it shouldn't be, because we are all stronger together with each other. A lot of times this is what happens. I get strong. And what do? I look down on the weak guy. Oh, you can't keep up? You can't do you even lift, bro? Like you can't what? That's contempt. And that has become of toxic masculinity. Like, you're not as tough as me. Guess what? And what it is that's fear. That's fear because you remember when you were the weak kid, and by putting down that kid, it makes you feel better about yourself. But that's so fucking terrible. And it's filled with martial arts, particularly MMA gyms and a lot of jiu-jitsu gyms, where you go in and it becomes this culture of who's the alpha, and you want to compete in this, and you don't tap, and you get hurt, and this and that. Dude, it's not about you competing against the other guy. It's about you being 1% better of yourself and pushing yourself. And, when your weaker guy comes to the academy, don't look down on him. There's a funny thing. There's tons of memes like this in jiu-jitsu schools all the time. It's like, there's like a picture of like, the one stripe white belt. And then there's the new guy, and it's fresh meat. Like, oh, finally there's someone we can put down on the, the ladder and smash him down, and I can feel good about myself. Dude, that is so fucking unhealthy. That is so unhealthy. And let me tell you, champions don't do that. Yeah. Champions are those guys? Those are the Brock Lesnar's that fucking break. They fucking break because you're too stiff, and it sounds like, freaking Hillary Clinton bullshit, but it is. It takes a village to make you strong. It takes your striking coach, your jiu-jitsu coach, all your training partners. Anybody who goes into a fight is a product of a team and a clan and a family, and martial arts always came out of a clan. What is martial arts for? To protect the weak people. Don't have contempt for them. Have empathy for them. You should be the guy standing up for the weak guy and saying, hey, this is how it's done. Hey, let me show the ropes. And whatever martial arts school, I've seen it. I'll tell you an experience I had in Japan. One of the reasons I stopped training karate in Japan. So, guys, I started in karate. I moved to Japan, and I was doing a lot of different martial arts. But of course, I was a karate guy, so I wanted to continue doing karate. So I was and I'm going to say it, I was at the JKA, the Japan Karate Federation headquarters, right? And old school Japanese place. And the instructors there were pretty good, right? They weren't bad guys or anything like that, right? At least as far as I could tell. But they were old school, which is nothing wrong with that. But the junior instructors came in at one point. And not the seniors, 80-year-old guys, but I'm talking the more junior guys, right? They were like, 20s, and they're all tough, and they're all from the high school colleges. And they brought in this college team, and I have never seen such horrible bullying and hazing in my life. So I'm watching these guys coach, and the guy's taking a bamboo stick and just beating another guy down, and not only that, but verbally abusing him too. Like, terrible. And this is actually like part of Japanese culture. It's a dark side of Japanese culture. Whereas, okay, if you're not tough, I'm gonna abuse you. Remember that movie, Full Metal Jacket? You remember that movie? Yeah. Remember the scene where Vincent D'Onofrio's character can't keep up? So what do? They all put soap and beat him up, Sure. And like, what the fuck, man? That's fucking terrible. Like, yeah, we want to be strong. I want to grit, but you don't want to get, and if somebody's not pushing their weight legitimately, that's a problem. Hey, I get that. But at the same time, having contempt for weak people to feel good about yourself is so fucking destructive, and it isolates you. And it's not healthy. And then also not recognize that every single one of us has a moment of weakness, and we're going to need someone. And people have to admit it. You can't be like fucking, Clint Eastwood, fistful of dollars, I'm going to walk in the sunset alone. Man, that's fucking Hollywood bullshit. Dude, you need a clan. You need people, and you're going to have days where you're going to be down. You're going to be shit. You're going to be awful. And you know what? Your JoJo brother is going to put his hand on your head and hey, man, I've been there too. It's cool. It's chill. Did you work hard today? Good. Well, that was a good day. Not like, yeah, dude, that guy fucking tapped the shit out of you yesterday. You suck, motherfucker. No, that's terrible. And that's the culture in a lot of martial arts schools where it's like, who can be more alpha? And it's not just jiu-jitsu. It's not just MMA. It's not just Muay Thai. It's like everything, even Aikido. Man, toxic masculinity is rampant in Aikido, even though they don't actually fight. But it's like, this is a terrible thing because it's pattern of dominance. And the Japanese philosophers, or actually Buddhist philosophers, recognized this centuries ago. I mentioned this years ago, but there's, a lot of times the Buddhist philosophers talk about personality traits, but they have archetypes. Just like, you have these Jungian psychological archetypes in the West. What they used is they used the kind of like Hindu goddesses or gods as like kind of archetypes of personality. And this is goddess Azura, right? And it's the goddess of like, it's the path of Azura is known as the Buddhist path. Of like, and I'm not a Buddhist scholar or anything, I did my Japanese studies, but this is, years ago. But it's this path of like dominance, but it's also the path of self-destruction. So what it is like, you're just this machine of like dominating others for your own growth versus like doing your inner work. And it's like, this is not what we need to be. And that's the antithesis of Zen and Buddhism. Don't go down that path of like feeling good at yourself at the expense of others. And this is why a lot of fighters, they can't stop fighting, not because they're adrenaline rush or this and that. That happens. That's too. And you want it, but they define themselves in the context of demolishing and pushing down and crushing others. I'm the man. I'm the hammer. You're the nail. And if I'm not the hammer, what the fuck am I? And I think, or I'm a fighter, but now I'm a little older. And I was just saying, like, look, I'm almost 50 and, I've trained some of my guys. Like I was rolling with G the other day and he just like moshed me. That's one of my fighters. And, like it's tough, like, man, it's like you have to define yourself by more than beating people. You have to define yourself by your effort and your grit for sure. But you can't say I'm better because I'm better than that guy. Like, no, it's better because I did my best and I'm striving towards what are positive male values? Courage, determination. Also, your protector. Those are positive male traits. This is positive, man. I'm not in war for masculine. I believe in masculine traits, but masculine traits can be in women too. This is not a definition of gender. It's like, okay, I can be a protector, I can be courageous, and I can have grit, and you can be a woman. I can be have that as a man, but I can also have empathy and compassion and self-forgiveness as a man, and that's a quote unquote feminine trait. But these are humanistic values. They're not just male or female. But in men, it's like, real men don't fucking cry, or real men don't eat quiche or whatever. What the fuck? Who decided that?
I love quiche.
Yeah, I know, right? Me too. and a lot of these definitions are not that old. This Jordan Peterson gets out there and he says, oh, well, there's this biological imperative that this and that, yeah, whatever, dude. A lot of them are Victorian. There's these pictures, right? Because, homophobia goes very much in hand with this toxic culture. But there's pictures which you look at guys and there's much more of a brotherhood aspect in the 19th century before the Victorian values really took hold and things like that, of guys like hugging and being what would consider be like almost like a homosexual level of intimacy. But they're not. They're just guys. They're just hugging each other, like holding hands because that's cool because you're my brother. You're my bro, but you can't do that anymore because it's like gay, man. Like, dude, why not? Well, who the fuck cares? And there's this great post of this guy and he's like a manly man, but he has a son and his son wants to wear dresses. And then people are like, dude, why do you let your son wear dresses? It was like, because he wants to. You got a problem with that? I don't have a problem with that. That's real masculinity. And, a real man, a real person, a real actualized human is okay with showing their vulnerability. Okay with, hey, man, today wasn't the best day for me. But you know what? That's okay. I'm going to have compassion for myself. I'm going to go and I'm going to strive harder the next day. And I'm not going to get in this pit. And if I have a problem, I am going to seek out my friends, my tribe. You can't do it alone. And then that's when you go down that hole and you do a drug overdose and addiction. And, John Jones, that guy has a problem. That guy has a problem. And he has something that he's covering through drug addiction and, or not addiction, but, something. And while he's a brilliant fighter, he's not self-actualized. He's doing some sort of behavior that is not getting him where he needs to be, And, I don't know. Look, I'm not in his head. I can't diagnose him from afar. But, when you're going on these benders of, that's not a healthy thing. And, drug addiction, binge drinking, all these things, especially in America, are huge. Like, dude, that's not healthy, man. That's not healthy. And it's not healthy because we put these man box traits, and that's not a term I use. It's a term that, a lot of psychologists use a box. Okay, you got to be stoic. You can't cry. You can't show this. You can't do this. You got to be on your own. You got to be tough all this time. Dude, you can't be tough every day. But that doesn't mean quit or give up. So that's my take. And I think all of us have to kind of like redefine, particularly the empathy issue. Like, you got to have empathy along with toughness. You can't be like, yeah, I'm tough and fuck you, snowflake. What kind of world are we living in there? And that's why that trolling culture is so good. So big now, because people are like, yeah, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. But all those trolls, they're just pathetic. They don't have lives, sitting in the basement, tapping on TV, screaming.
Yeah, you guys suck. We're going to come beat you up.
Yeah, exactly. Woodley, you just showed your little bitch, man, because you couldn't fight Kamaru. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, how do you get off, like, putting people down?
Yeah.
That's so unhealthy.
Not a good way to live.
No, it's not. And you know what? It's rampant in the martial arts. So I would say, first of all, people listening in any martial art, whatever style you are, dude, help the juniors, help them, teach them. The other day I came into my academy, and it was so cool because all the newer students were helping the newest students. So it was like a trickle down of helping. The top guys were helping the next guys, everybody was like teaching the other person how to do it. And I went around and make sure that everybody's teaching correctly. But, like, I can't do it alone. Everybody was helping everybody. I'm like, this is so good. And nobody's looking down on anyone because they're not doing well or this. It's a place where you can push yourself and be accepted. And definitely we want grit. Grit is awesome. Push through. Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. But at the same time, understand you can't always have great days. And you have to have that empathy. And we sit there, and as a team, we build each other up. And I think the most successful teams understand that. There's the Seattle Seahawks. They go off. They have a sports psychologist, and they change the way they're coaching, and they change everything to make sure that it's this positive environment, so that you can self-actualize. And you can be okay with failure. You can be okay with trying things. You can okay with having a bad day, as long as you go back and say, hey, tomorrow I'm going to push it harder. And so for the people out there, remember, every day there's going to be a time when you have a weakness, and you're going to have dark days. Man, I have dark days, So you know what? I turn to someone, my best friends, my tribe, my students, my wife, and I use their energy to help me. And that's also, you got to be there for your friends. And it's really important. We had sometimes you go into a tournament, you have a loss, and man, it's tough. But you can't define yourself by a loss. You can't define yourself by a win either. You have to define yourself by the journey. And the journey is do your best, 1% every day, and never define yourself in terms of, like, oh, I pushed this guy down and I feel better about myself. That the path of Azura is negative. It's terrible. And you define yourself by your compassion as well as your grit, with that yin and yang, and it's a much better way to live, and your definition of I can't cry, I can't do this. Why? Who said that? There's tremendous amounts of ancient literature going back from Homer to this of the great warriors of the getting down and weeping, because vulnerability is true strength. Showing your most vulnerable side shows that you are really strong, because you're like, okay, even if you stab me in this heart, and I can come back from this. That's real strength, And I had to struggle with this too, because of course I'm not perfect. I have the insecurities and this and that, but I have to understand that some days, it's going to wake up and it's that dark cloud. So what do? You ask for help, and you don't take your own life. You ask for help. You reach out to the community. Yeah. It's so sad. We've lost so many people to this. So many people. It's suicide and drug overdose and all this. It's terrible. Yeah.
Unnecessarily. So look for help if you need it, and also give help when you can.
Yeah.
I have no experience with this because I'm perfect. So, but I'm glad that Rene is here.
You are perfect, Matt.
To let everybody know that he is imperfect. No, please. I've also gone through my own.
So that was my speech. I hope I didn't bore you.
No, it's very important. Toxic masculinity needs to stop. And it stops with each and every person stopping it.
And it's also not a war on masculinity.
No.
It's there's positive and negative, there's one guy who went on my Facebook, he's like, oh, I'm not part of that. Okay, you're not part of that, but there's a problem. And, there are people with dealing with that. If you're dealing with something, you gotta reach out. You gotta ask for help.
If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Remember that? I think that's from the 80s and war on drugs.
Yeah, but
something.
I don't know. You're not part of, but if you're not part of the solution, the part of the problem is this binary thing. Like it's kind of like dark. I'd say let's all not judgment. Not cast judgment. That's my thing.
That's stupid. No, that's joke. That's great. That was my pretending to cast
but
judgment.
it's really sad. I walked into the podcast today and I'm sad because Carl, the suicides I've heard in the martial art community, people taking their own life. It's and people go to martial arts a lot of times to overcome their demons, and then when they don't succeed, they don't fit some arbitrary definition of manliness, they give up, and it's super sad, and it's getting me down. This man I respected so much, it affects me. Hey, I'm going to say it, I'm really sad about this.
Check on your strong friends. Sometimes they need it the most.
Yeah, right. Exactly. The guys who you think the strongest, really need it. There's a great jiu-jitsu girl out there. Her name is Kristen Barlin, who's really, really been open. She's a warrior, man. This girl is freaking great. She is a warrior. She's open about her struggles with depression and how she's overcome it. And she's an inspiration to me. And you know what? I don't talk about masculine virtues in terms of just men. It's your warrior virtues. You want to be a real warrior, you open up and you show, like Chris Romulo, man, he had him on our podcast. Mm-hmm. That guy, to write his book and to open up all that closet of pain and show everybody and learn, Chris, shout out to you. You are everything that inspires me. That guy is exactly it. And his students are just, amazing to have that mentor. And I know he has personally helped tons of people from the steps of despair to really, be the best of their lives. So, we need more people like Chris in this world.
Hopefully they'll come. All right. That's our time. Rene, we're going to hold hands as we walk out this door to show our masculines, solidarity. Thanks everybody for listening. I have a tendency of ruining everything.
No, you're perfect, Matt. You never ruin anything.
We will see you back next week. Is there anything coming up that we need to tease? No.
There's something. There's some big stuff coming up. Holy crap! There's a really big fight coming up. Hold on. There's some really, really serious stuff. Hold on. Give me a second. Events. Luis dos Santos. Derek Luis Jr. dos Santos. That's interesting.
Is that a big fight?
And Till versus Masvidal. Darren Till versus Jorge Masvidal. That's kind of a cool one.
Yeah. Darren Till's on the up and up.
Yeah. And another coming up March 23rd is Thompson versus Pettit. Oh, so basically, Thompson is originally a karate background and Anthony Pettit is originally Taekwondo background. So obviously they cross train and things like that. But it's interesting to see two strikers of the traditional arts face off. Obviously they're cross trained and Pettis really fights like a Muay Thai guy as well. But it's interesting. That's kind of a cool fight. And the next one is Barbosa versus Gaethje. This is it. March has a lot of stuff. I'm interested to see Till Masvidal. That's going to be an interesting striker match, So those are some really good fights. So very looking forward to them.
All right. Well, we'll talk about those when they happen.
Absolutely. Oh, and next week. Everybody got to tune in next week because we got one of my really good friends who's actually a really famous author of the John Rain books. If you ever love real martial art action depicted accurately and with a great story, all the John Rain series is it. He's also, people don't realize, but Barry Eisler is an ex-CIA agent and a great, really masterful knowledge of judo, because I trained judo with him in Japan, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, striking, what would be more considered self-defense, combative things. These are real martial artists who trains every day. And also is a great gifted writer, and he's going to be on his podcast. He's a new book coming out, and he's going to talk about it, and also talk about his concepts of self defense and how he in the CIA and all that stuff.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Twitter at Marshall_Culture and on Instagram at MarshallCultureCast. Please leave a review on iTunes, and we'll see you next time on the Marshall Culture Podcast.